How's it going, friends and family of the internet? Welcome to the Real AF TV podcast, a show about fishing and random takes from the land of 10,000 lakes. I'm one of your hosts, Josh LaBaw.
And I am Tim Wagner.
Tim, your camera seems to be frozen or something weird. Like, dude, what is going on? Like, where are you today?
In a cornfield of all places.
What the fuck are you doing in a cornfield, dude? That is super weird. Like, why would you be out there? Like, I don't even know where to begin of like why the fuck you're in a cornfield, but like, can you tell us what's out there? What is, describe your surroundings. That's the best thing that I can say.
Just a lot of blood and condoms.
What the fuck, dude? What are you talking about? Are you high right now?
Yeah.
What? But dude. Like, I thought, like, you're a professional driver. You can't. I mean, I know it's legal here in Minnesota again now, finally, but like, you just come on the podcast and this is it. You don't even tell me ahead of time. Oh God, dude. That is great. Next time you let me know so I can join you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now that we got that out of the way, you got to tell me what's good today.
It's nice. It's a good titty.
Oh, really? I did not see that coming. Did you see it at work or like you're just driving down the road? What's happening?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, if you haven't noticed, friends and family, that's just me fucking around and making a silly joke. Tim is so sick today that he could not make it. I don't know what number I'm going to number this episode, but this is just Josh. This is Josh on a solo mission. I'm going to go ahead and keep things rolling. We're not going to miss a week. If you didn't know already, this is an every other week podcast. The Real AF TV podcast comes out every other Monday. We do holiday specials and things like that. So because this is a bit of a different episode, I'm not sure if I'm going to number it or not ahead of time, but I'm just dwelling on that a little bit because it's fresh in my mind. Tim really thought he was going to be able to make it today. The short version is he got so sick, he's bogged down. Rest is the only thing that's going to make him better. I mean, he hit the mic with COVID, a couple years ago, and he just had to call in sick to this one. And I'm not going to judge him, like it's something that's going to happen. It's something that did happen, that has happened. He's coming fresh off a road trip right now and came home, got back to work. You know how you get tired from vacation? Like, does that happen to you? Are you able to take vacation? I hope you are, man. All the people out there listening, I hope you're able to take vacations. It's good. It's good for everything. It's good for the system. And you sometimes you come back more tired than if you would have just stayed home because you go so hard on vacation. You feel like you have to enjoy every moment because this doesn't come around that often. And we'll find out in the next episode from Tim if that was what happened. But I know he did a lot of driving. This was a road trip. If you haven't kept up with the episodes, and I know that he had, come back and went back to work and got sick. And so when somebody who has recorded a podcast, COVID positive before, and during the pandemic, he got like version 2.0 or some shit. You know that he's real sick if he's got to call it in because sleep is the only thing that he wants to do right now. And as much as he wanted to make it, it was like last second, like buzzer beater. He had to text me and say, like, dude, I just don't think I can do it. And I'd been telling him all week, I was like, hey man, if you're sick, you need to not worry about it. And so he came in the last minute and said he couldn't do it. And I said, don't worry about it. I got this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get a solo podcast going. I'm going to try to Bill Burr this. And admittedly, I don't listen to a lot of the Bill Burr podcasts, but I know he just goes off solo. We'll see how long it lasts, how long the podcast is. But I'm still going to do a podcast. I'm still going to go with the fishing and random takes. We're going to make this a real AFTV podcast after all. But we got to do what we always do over here on the Real AFTV podcast. Let's kick it off with some fishing news. Quick, before we get into the news, I'm still working on my little studio over here. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll probably see the new angle, the new setup, and things like that. Little by little, you're going to be seeing things change. And then hopefully you'll go over to patreon.com/realaftv and remember Real Like Fishing Real and support us so we can continue to build our studios here at home. But anyways, into the fishing news. That's what we're here for. I got this one from the local Channel 5 News, KSTP over there in Minneapolis. Even before I get into the headline, I usually make up a headline for this and stuff like that, a little eye-catching headline. This is like one of those things that comes up all the time, so frequently. And since we're about learning over here and keeping up with things on fishing and trying to sort of keep people in the know, keep people interested, hopefully spawn some people who haven't even or are just getting into fishing, spawn their interest even larger than what it is, really get them hooked and keep them going. And the reason why I say that before I get into this one is because walleye conservation changes again is the headline. And there's this thing that sometimes is in parts of the fishing community where the DNR is kind of viewed as the bad guy. They're the enforcers of the rules, and it's like, why can't you just let me do this and that and whatever? Like they're cutting back. But I think if Tim was here, he'd back me up and be like, yeah, it sometimes does feel like, we've talked enough. So I don't want to speak for him, but I think he'd back me up on like, hey, they're out there doing a ton of science on trying to conserve the fish population and the fish sizes and things like that. And so these things happen. And it feels like every single season we talk about something like this. So what's happening is on Upper Red Lake in northern Minnesota, the walleye regs are changing for ice season, essentially. Now, they did go into effect on November 1st for Upper Red Lake. So it's not quite ice season. It gets fucking cold up here. If you're not from Minnesota, it gets cold. And if you're not from Minnesota, also know that this is happening around you too, that these the DNR up here, which we call Department of Natural Resources, right? You probably have a different name for it over in your state, in your country, even if you're listening to this outside. Thank you for listening. We often overlook, like, they're doing a ton of work out there in the field. I feel like I'm not trying to, justify anything that they're doing if it's impacting you. If it's impacting you, you should, go to your local government and figure that out. But the point that I'm trying to get to here with the fact that the DNR is changing the regulations, what would be kind of considered mid-season, since the pamphlet, the booklet, is already out in circulation. And now here it is, they got to make these changes. So in Upper Red Lake, the walleye regs are changing as of November 1st, 2023. You got to go down to 4 keepers from 5. And on Lake Mille Lacs, the change isn't happening until December 1st. So by then, Mille Lacs is a huge body of water, so I don't want to speak to their ice levels. But again, these are kind of regs that are going into ice season as the seasons really change as we get into fall and then into winter here in Minnesota. Mille Lacs is one walleye, 21 to 23 inches, and only 28 is your max. Like, so you can go over 28 or you got to be in that 21 to 23 slot. The reason why I was kind of going on the rant and saying like the DNR does all this work is because they do a fall population assessment going into ice season essentially up here. And if you're down in Texas where you don't have such big seasonal fluctuations, you're the parks at Texas Park and Wildlife, they're doing work like this too, and it's all about trying to sustain the fish population and to sustain the sizes and things like that. So if you're having, if you're one of those people that's like, man, fuck them, they did this, whatever, then, hit us up in the comments. I'd like to hear it. I'm down for both stories, both sides of the story, but the whole reason for bringing up this topic is that this is happening. Conservation efforts are being researched and implemented constantly. So make sure to check your regs if you know where you're going, if you know your area super well. You still may be under regs changes, right? So it's one of those things where this is more of a public service announcement where I'm using a news story to say, hey, keep an eye on things. It fluctuates out there. That's kind of how I can put it best, is that there's ups and downs into the seasons, and you just gotta keep an eye on it. So there's not there is a responsibility by you as the fisher person there to make sure you as the fisher have the responsibility to keep up on this stuff. Also, cheers, guys, to a solo podcast, and also to the colder fishing season. This is the time of year when things really start to get wonk. So anyways, let's go ahead and get into a little bit of housekeeping, because we just did a holiday special. We just did our Halloween special. We do holiday specials over here on the Real AF TV podcast, and I really appreciate you guys, especially over there on YouTube. I don't get to the other analytics as much. I don't get to the other analytics as often with iHeart and Spotify and stuff like that. But the point that I'm trying to get to here, you guys are awesome. The audience comes through and supports these holiday episodes, even though they're not in our typical wheelhouse of fishing. So love it. We love doing them. One of my favorite parts of the year is doing the sound design for these holiday specials. It's really great. Lets me flex my creative muscles. Tim comes through, who's usually doing the performance. It's great. So again, really appreciate you guys out there supporting our specials. Look forward to Thanksgiving and Christmas here as we enter the holiday season. Don't forget, those can all be found over at youtube.com/@realaftv. Remember, YouTube is now doing that @ thing with the backslash. This podcast is brought to you by Real AF TV Patreon. I'll insert that in here somewhere. You know what? I'll just do it right now. realaf.tv/Patreon. Go over there, support us a little bit. You can do a 1 month, you can actually join Patreon for 1 month. And just drop us, $20 for a month and then dip out or whatever. I also want to ask, would you do tips? If I could get a Patreon, and if I could get if I could get a PayPal, and if I could get a Venmo up there, would you tip us $1 for an episode? We'd appreciate it for sure. Again, cheers. Tip your bartender. But I mean that in a way of like, would you tip us $1 for an episode? Please share with a friend. That is the best way we're growing the podcast currently, is we're just getting people to share it. It's hard to get through the algorithm, but we're getting there. The YouTube algorithm I'm speaking to specifically. We're getting there, but I would appreciate it if you shared with a friend. Just let them know every other Monday the new episode's going to drop, and there's going to be fishing and random takes. If you don't like listening to us ramble on for like 2 hours, which ain't going to happen this time because it's just me, Josh, on the mic, trying to do this thing solo. But if you don't like listening to all of the extra stuff at the beginning and the ends of the episode, then there's the off week, where on Wednesday we drop the fishing topic, Friday is the random take, and then we come around to Monday again and we circle back to our release schedule. So here we go. Let's get into it. This is what I'm going to call the fishing topic. Now, I don't know how long, again, I'm going to get into this, but it's something that I think I don't necessarily, it's a topic that I touch a lot on, like history and stuff like that. I always bring a lot of history to it, and I try to do my research and get multiple sources and things like that. And I think that when me and Tim record, this is like a species by species topic. But for me, coming here now and just talking to myself, talking to you, the audience, asking you to engage, which, by the way, I totally am asking you guys to do. Please go over to X and hit us up. We're at just look Real AF TV, real like Fish and Reel. Look us up on X, Instagram. If you go to realaf.tv, then there is a contact page. It's actually realaf.tv/contact. You can email us directly through the contact form there. YouTube comments, that's a great way to go about getting in touch with us. We watch these things, and this episode, without Tim there for the back and forth, I'm really going to ask you as the audience, as the listener, to hit us up, because even though Tim's so sick that he can't, that he's too tired to record, his voice is all fucked up. He just didn't think it would be a good idea to be on the mic, that he will see the comments and all that shit on social media. So please interact with me on this episode, and we're going to interact back with you. So the topic, ancient fish. It's just that generic. Recently in an episode, Tim had mentioned that there was and I'm forgetting his exact example, but he was like, there's a longer distance between the Stegosaurus and the T-Rex than there was between the T-Rex and man, as like Homo sapiens. It was something to that effect. And I was like, I did know that. I just forget the exact terminology. So it is surprising to hear every time. Like I forget the exact species references. And it made me think, holy shit, that's right. There were a ton of fish. There was a lot of water and things like that. And there are, sharks and other things like that that have a fossil record that goes way back. So specifically what I did is I looked up the Jurassic period because of the popularity of Jurassic Park. Just the thought, the word Jurassic brings up a thought, right? In the majority of Americans. And so I looked up the Jurassic period, and it said that this goes from 201.3 million years to 145 million years ago. That's huge. And that is such an incredibly long time ago. We're talking about, well, this goes back to the Jurassic Park references quick, because Triceratops, T-Rexes, the like sort of main features of Jurassic Park, they're not even from the Jurassic period. So judge it for what you will, but Jurassic's the coolest fucking word out of all these time periods. So of course you're going to name your book and movie Jurassic Park. But the point that I'm trying to get to here is the Jurassic Park or the Jurassic era, you will probably recognize, you will probably recognize names like the Brachiosaurus, the Apatosaurus, the Stegosaurus. These are probably dinosaurs that you recognize, and these are Jurassic period dinosaurs. Now, we're a fishing podcast and we're talking about ancient fish. We actually talked about, me and Tim, we had an episode we titled Dream Fish, and we talked about our dream fish. Like, what is our dream fish to catch, to hunt, to go after? If we could get one, it would be a big deal. This was episode 18, and now we're in the 70s, pushing 80. I don't know what I'm going to number this one. So we'll just say we're over 80 total episodes, including our specials. But this was all the way back in episode 18, where we talked about our dream fish and like what we would like to catch and things like that. And I had said the sturgeon, which is still true now, for me at least. I haven't caught one. I would love to go fishing for a sturgeon. And if you got any hot spots, here it is. Here's the interaction where I encourage you to come hit us up. Hit us up. Contact us. Leave a comment. Because I have sort of always just loved the idea of catching this fish. I think part of it is its size. I think that I have a grander idea of the fish hunting and catching process than what it would actually be, because not all sturgeons are so huge that they just flop on the bottom and you got to fight them for hours, right? I don't even know if I could fight one for hours anymore. But the idea that this thing is kind of shark-like, I think, has gotten me. The fact, I think Tim brought it up in episode 18, the fact that this thing is so ancient looking, I know that particular fish, maybe, 10 or 15 years old or something like that, that they don't get much older than that it still has that lineage, that it still goes back that far. We're talking like Gar. They're not the ones that set this off. One of the main ideas was the Arapemia. Man, I fucking tried to memorize that one. Not even memorize it. I know that one, but now I'm trying to read it and I'm fucking it up. it's like, that's like what I do. I know this name. Arapamia. So the gar, the Arapamia, sturgeons, the coelacanths, these are all fish that have fossil records that go back to the Jurassic area, 200 million, 145 million years ago. And the idea for this came from the Arapamia because they're so huge, and we're going to do an episode on just those fish. But to sum it up, is they're Amazon fish. And these fish are gigantic. I mean, they're huge. They are absolutely massive and a great protein source, and they've been around forever. They have these really thick, hard, like they're armored. That'd be one way to put it. And so I kind of have this infatuation with like these armored fish, because all these armored fish have this like ancient fossil record typically to them. I know the sturgeon isn't one of those hard scaled ancient type fish, but it has that shark background, like I kind of started this topic with. It has that sort of shark scale to it, you know. It has that feel of being ancient and old because it's tied back to, you know, something like sharks that have been around for so long. But the Arapar, oh my God, here I go again. Arapayama. Arapayama? Arapamia. Arapaima. Arapaima. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. But it's like a red, greenish fish, has this really ancient tail. You know, I feel like dragons are kind of modeled after this fish, and there are different versions, different types of this fish, you know, like in Asia and Australia and stuff like that. They go by different names. Again, we're probably going to end up doing a full podcast on this. I mean, it's such a interesting fish that I just don't see how it couldn't come up fairly soon. But the point is that this fish, you know, has been one of those that interests me because of its size, its elusiveness in a way, its location in the Amazon, which is almost always a difficult place to go fish, and the way that I've heard it spoke about on nature programming has always been that it's armored, it's tough, and it's not only tough from the fact that it's basically wearing armor in its scales, but that it's muscular, like the shape that it is, where its head and body are almost like one single thing. It, now it has this point on it. You know what? I'm gonna stop. I'm getting too far into this fish specifically, and I don't want to get into this fish specifically. I want to keep talking about fish. Like I want to talk about ancient fish in general, and my interest in them, and how we will definitely be covering them species by species, you know, as they pique our interest in future episodes. So the idea that there are these ancient fish that are still swimming around today, or these fish that are not ancient in age as a single fish, but ancient in lineage, right? Where you can sort of trace this back so far, and that they have this like really armored and like, I don't know, what am I trying to say? Like they have this strength about them that is just super interesting, and that I want to get my hands on it to just feel that power the power of that fish, and like sort of what it brings to the ecosystem and what it's brought to the ecosystem for what is literally millions of years. It's fucking crazy. So as somebody out there listening to this podcast right now, and I hope you're hanging in there with me, I want to ask you guys to go over to realaf.tv/contact and email us, and go over to YouTube and hit us up in the comments and stuff like that, and say, whether this is something that interests you or not, because though sometimes these fish are food, they're more often trophy catches or almost like a trophy. Even if you release them, right? It's about the story, the experience. That's a better way to put it. It's about the experience leading up to catching that fish, and the catching of the fish and the release and the safe release of the fish and everything. Like the catch of the fish is the climax, and the release and safe watching the fish swim away during release is, the closure to the story. And I want to know if this is something that interests you personally and how you kind of think of that. We have talked about it. Me and Tim have talked about how River Monsters, the TV show, does it and tells these stories. And we're not fans. I watch it. I've watched it. There's no doubt about that. I think it's interesting. I think it's great that show exists because it allows for someone like me to know that these fish exist and that I can go and learn about them in a different way. That show is too dramatic. It has commercial breaks in it that shouldn't exist because it creates. I'm going off on a production note here, and I realize that now. So I'm just going to stop. And I am going to say, I want to talk with you, the community of Real AF TV, about ancient fish. I want to hear your guys' feedback. I want to hear your fishing stories. One, two, I want to hear your thoughts around this of catching these fish, because sometimes these fish are so big, and it's just that they get that big. I don't mean that they're ancient in age, the ones that you can actually go out and hook right now. What I mean is these fish have been around for millions of years, and they lived in a time where they may have been the small fish, but now they're the big fish. They're the gigantic fish, right? And if we have these giant fish and we are catching them and we have to use these new modern methods to catch them, what is your thought about what we're doing to exhaust them to even get them on the shore, on the boat, and then try to safely release them, knowing that this may or may not, for like sturgeon for sure, I can speak to, have sort of limited reproductive capabilities. That's not really the word I'm looking for, but they can be somewhat endangered. I'll just say it that way, that they can be somewhat endangered. And so, sport catching these fish and letting them go and exhausting them and wearing them out. I want to hear your thoughts about that, because I'd still do it. I would still totally do it. Like, I would catch and release a sturgeon. I would catch and eat a sturgeon where it's legal. It's back to the sort of story with the news, where there are departments of natural resource, there are DNRs across the country that are monitoring this stuff, and I believe in the work that they're doing. And so if it's legal for me to catch a sturgeon, I'm gonna catch it and I'm gonna eat it, even if 300 miles downriver it's considered endangered. I believe that if it's legal in my area, then they've done their work and they know that it's safe, to be putting them on the catch and eat list. So, yeah, I'd like to have that conversation. It'd be really cool to have you guys interact with that. So go over to realaf.tv/contact. You can email us directly, put a comment in the YouTube video. We'll get that too. And you know what? If you're $1 Patreon, DMs, there's DMs on Patreon. You just go back and forth on there. You know, it's a sweet way to communicate. I do it with other Patreon subscriptions. You get right on there and you can message back and forth. And if I don't have them open, hit me up in a comment on YouTube. Tell me to go open them up on Patreon. I need to make sure that they're open. So I don't have too much more on this ancient fish. I just really wanted to put this episode out there. This sort of like one-way conversation that would hopefully spark a two-way conversation. If that makes any sense. It's got to make sense. Makes sense in my head. Hope it makes sense in yours. Again, I am going to do a random take here. So let's talk about ancient fish and let's see where that discussion goes. Because I would like to really talk about it with people in the fishing community. I think it's a fascinating topic as someone who is I don't want to say obsessed with history, but like thoroughly enjoys history, and especially crazy things like this as I start to discover what we're doing now to kind of sustain gar populations and help the sturgeons come back and stuff like that. It's very interesting to me. So let's, again, short one. Don't know how this time is going to work. We're working it out. We always do live to tape stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead right now. I'm going to kick it over to the random take. Sure, I'll put a break in here. Why not? Hit the break. Here we are, patreon.com/realaftv. That's right, patreon.com/realaftv. Real like fish and reel. We are on Patreon, and we are coming to tell you, and by we, I mean me and Tim, Real AFTV podcast here, coming to you to say we have a Patreon as low as $1 a month, but hey, you could go up to $100 if you really wanted to get crazy with it. It's there. Go over to our website, realaf.tv. You can find the Patreon link right there, or go to Patreon and look us up, Real AFTV, Real Like Fish and Reel. And we have things like, for $50 a month, we will customize, what kind of tackle is it, Tim? We have some in the warehouse right now that we haven't actually ran
a lure. Yes.
Lure, thank you.
Is a crankbait.
Crankbait.
Yes, we will customize a crankbait for you.
At the $50 tier. Also, Patreon, if you're new to the whole Patreon thing, if you're on a podcast, you're probably not that new to it. But Patreon is something that you can jump in and out of. Like if you do $50 this month, bam, you get the custom lure, but you don't want to do that for the whole year. You jump down to the $5 a month tier where you're going to get early access content. You can help vote on the random take, one of the random takes for the month. And, we'll keep up with you on Patreon as well. Like just a direct Patreon contact. There's communication you do only through Patreon. That's what I'm trying to say. So if you're new, there's just a little intro to it.
Yeah. And to clarify that custom painted lure is a fully custom painted lure, like the pattern and everything. That won't be just something that we have a lure that we just like write Real AFTV on.
Yes. Thank you, Tim. Thank you for clearing that up, because yes, it's a slug, for lack of a better word, right now, and it will be turned into something.
Right.
I'm not good at the whole fishing lingo, so maybe Tim, you could evaluate on that a little bit, or like elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, right now it has no color, and I will give it color.
There we go.
It will look like a bait fish imitation of some sort. It might not be exactly colored. It might not be realistic. Some of that stuff out there that the different companies work with makes different stuff, but it will be a custom painted lure,
Lure.
and it won't look like dog shit. Because not to be like, too full of myself, but I have some talent.
You have some artistic talent. Yes.
Yeah.
Very true. If you know friends and family and stuff like that got a few bucks to kick our way, let them know. RealAF.tv. Scroll down a little bit. There's the Patreon link. It'll shoot you right over. Sign up for a little bit.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Real AF TV podcast, show about fishing and random takes from the land of 10,000 lakes. I totally forgot to say, how's it going? But I don't always do that. So, anyways, here we are in a random take. If I split these out and you're seeing this one, it's just me. Well, maybe. Tim, are you there?
In a cornfield of all places.
Whoa, that is weird. How are you recording in a cornfield? Like, can you describe what's going on around you?
Just a lot of blood and condoms.
Whoa. I am totally making Tim say that. It is just me. Tim is out sick. His voice is gone and other things like that from what I understand. So, yeah, he's just not able to hop on the mic today. So it's just me keeping up our never missing every other week situation. He had to call in sick last minute. It was very last minute. So, I managed to put together a podcast here for you guys and get that out. The second part of the podcast here, the random take that I'm going to go off on, has got to be video games. Because if I'm going to talk about something random, it's going to be video games. It's just like it's my main hobby. I mean, I'm a tech guy, and it is just sort of the thing that got me into tech. And I've been on the podcast. I've put it out on the podcast before. I don't care for the financial contributions that nostalgia leads to. In the remake market or in the reissue market, more in the reissue market. So what I'm really trying to say is, like, we've talked about movies and like what's old is new again and what's old is just being remade. Like, I think a lot of movies have gone stale and stagnant, and they've just kind of rehashed old shit, and it's not for the better. I would rather see some original creativity pumped up than fucking third remake of RoboCop, you know? So I thought to myself about what could I talk about and engage with you, the Real AF TV audience, on. And I am making an assumption here, because the analytics aren't great, that you're somewhere in, your late 20s to mid 40s, and that you grew up with video games, and that you grew up with video games in your house. And the reason, and if you didn't grow up with them in your house specifically, you knew somebody, they were in your life. It was something that you did as a kid, and maybe you continue to do now, like me and Tim do. But the point here is nostalgic video games, and how that affects the way that I purchase my games and other things like that. So I buy nostalgic video games. Right now, there is a large amount of video games that are being remade, remastered, things like that. That there's even weird verbiage around remade, remastered, and shit like that. That just makes it hard to even know, because there's games that are just like exact fucking remakes. No, they're like 1-to-1. There's like a PS5 game that's a 1-to-1 PlayStation game. They just made the graphics better. And it's like, Now, is that a good thing? I have an opinion on that, but I want to hear yours. Because the answer is no. You please chime in the comments. But the point, again, I'm saying that a fucking lot. I'm sorry. So where this is all going is that there has been a bit of a nostalgia bug from me currently to go back and play PS2 games, and it's actually really mostly one, because off-road games right now are kick-ass graphically. I'm sure the physics are nuts, but I was absolutely great at ATV Off-Road Fury and Off-Road Fury 2 on PlayStation 2. And I had so much fun. When it went online, I had a blast. I got good at it, and it had physics, but it was like arcade physics, and it was great fun. It wasn't like rock climbing, suspension level, like individual independent suspensions on your side by side, kind of like realistic level. And it wasn't over the top arcadey, gone too far, sort of like the Crew video games, as I would call. I would say that the Crew's gone just a step too far into arcade. This was more, ATV Off-Road Fury was just like kind of more, it was like Mario Kart mixed with a level of reality that you felt this was believable. And that has sort of been popping up because of the Metal Gear Solid release. So the Metal Gear Solid Volume 1 Master Collection, or whatever the fucking weird name that they gave it, came out. And so basically on modern consoles and PC, you can get like all the old Nintendo game, all the old Metal Gear Nintendo games. And then you can get Metal Gear Solid from PlayStation, absolute classic. Metal Gear Solid 2 from PlayStation 2, absolute classic. Metal Gear 3, and again, they basically packed these up and sent them out all in a package. And those are some of my favorite games of all time. But I have no desire to play any of them except for Metal Gear Solid 1 currently, because I have so many new games that I want to play that I just don't feel like I need to go back to these old games. But there's something about ATV Off-Road Fury that just like popped back into my brain thinking about PS2 games when thinking about Metal Gear Solid, that was like, fuck man, that was good. That was a good game. And I want to just get back into it. Like, I just want to pull up my PlayStation and fucking play that game again and see if I'm still good at it, but also see if it has the ability to hold up against modern gaming, modern racing and stuff like that. But I do have to admit, I love to see this Metal Gear Solid collection come out, because it is hard to play these games. I want to play Metal Gear Solid original again. And it's hard because I have the disc and I have PlayStation. Like, I have the disc and I have a physical original PlayStation. But the idea of digging all that out and hooking it up, and would it even work on my HD TV? My new flat screen, it's not new, it's old as fuck, but the TV that I have, would it even work on that? Because that is a modern TV, that thing's like, I don't know, less than 12 years old or whatever the fuck. I don't really know how old the TV is, but it's after the CRT had died, basically, right? It's not a CRT. It is a flat screen. But the point of all of that is, could I even hook up my old shit and make it work? So the answer is likely no. And that's why the new sort of re-release shit is cool. But it does make me want to play Metal Gear again. And I've just been listening to a lot of podcasts and stuff like that are saying, the gameplay may not be the greatest, but if you remember the gameplay, if you remember how to play that game, and you will, if you did play it back then, it'll come back to you. The game holds up because the cinematics and the story, and it basically, to me, says Hideo's a fucking genius and his game holds up. You should play it again. And I have one of those mini PlayStations and I'm going, yeah, fuck yeah, I want to play that again. Hey, Real AF TV community, hit us up in the comments. You want to watch me play that live? I can make that happen. I would play all of Metal Gear Solid 1 live again. If that's something you would do, play it on Twitch or YouTube. I do it on YouTube. We're trying to stick to the YouTube channel for what we're doing. For our video feeds, we're trying to stick with YouTube. Nothing against Twitch. Nothing at all. But we're more of an edited, like we want to do our podcast live to tape, and then we want to do our shows and our shorts and stuff like that. We want to put a little bit more effort into those and put a edit behind them, right? It's not that I don't edit the podcast, but the point still stands. This would be a live stream situation, so it would go under our live stream part of our YouTube channel. This could definitely be two parts to the YouTube channel, where we would have, like, not even two parts, but it would be an additional one. We've already done a live stream on YouTube, and I think that we could do it again. And even if this is gaming and it's not a fishing game or not an outdoor game or something to that effect, I think if you, the community, are willing to support that, come watch me play Metal Gear Solid 1, like I should say Metal Gear Solid, original Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation version. And let's talk fishing and shit like that. Now, I'm not the fisher in the group, like that's Tim, but doesn't mean that Tim can't join. Doesn't mean that I can't take your answers and hit up Tim while we're live on the air, or come back to him later, right? It could be fun, but that's not why I picked this topic. I got off there a little bit too far. I just wanted to say that this was me talking about ancient fish and ancient video games in a way. And ancient video games are PS1 games now. I mean, these games have this look to them that looks and feels ancient. And they're bringing them back for that reason. And I just don't necessarily agree with that technique exactly. I think they did a great job on Resident Evil 2 on bringing that into the modern era, because that had those fixed camera angles and shit, and that kind of sucked. But here we are with Metal Gear Solid, and they're basically just re-releasing these video games, and they're good. They're still holding up. Like they're fine, other than they look fucking ancient, like I already mentioned. So it's weird. It's kind of there's kind of a duality about it, but I have this thing about Mario 3 right now too, where it's like I should play a little bit more Mario 3 again, because Mario Wonder just came out, and me and Tim are going to talk about Mario Wonder here on the next podcast. But Mario Wonder just came out, and it has, for me, I'm making this sort of connection where what Mario 3 did for me, Mario Wonder is kind of doing again. But now I'm wondering, since I have a kid, and I did the math, and I'm like, oh shit, Mario Wonder's hitting for her kind of how Mario 3 hit for me, and I love Mario 3. I have, these nostalgia goggles for the frog suit and the fucking shit. Why the hell are you dressed like a panda? No, it's not what it is. But like that Toon suit, I think it's called. But basically when he gets the raccoon tail, when Mario has the raccoon tail and the ears on his hat, or the full suit, I have these, the nostalgia for that and the wonder that brought back then. So to hear, to have Mario Wonder coming out now, makes me sort of think back to that time and go, I wonder if this is going to hit for her the way Mario 3 did for me and stuff like that. And I wanted to but I wanted to just present that here as I wrap up to the Really FTV fans and say, like, yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about, if you're playing video games right now, or if you're out there playing the new Mario and you're old enough to remember Mario 3. Is like, what do you think about, this Mario 3? And if you got kids, especially, like, what do you think Mario Wonder is doing for them and stuff like that? Because we're going to talk about it. And so, like, your questions about Mario or your comments and stuff like that, they could easily make it into the next podcast, because it is a shorter topic, because it's just a 2D Mario game. And we'll get into that in the next, episode or two. But I'm just having these weird thoughts about, like, how, again, to make the through line here of ancient video games, of like how ancient video games are influenced the new generation of video games and stuff like that. Because you got your Final Fantasy VII remakes, and again, back to Metal Gear Solid Delta. They're basically remaking Metal Gear Solid 3 with new graphics, but Final Fantasy VII is like a complete reimagining of the game that just is like keeping the core, like a lot of the core components, and it makes me think, wow, this got me with nostalgia. Did Mario Wonder get me with nostalgia because I thought I was buying a new game, but maybe it's just giving me Mario 3 vibes? Like, it's weird. It's a weird thing to think about, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. And then if you do leave a comment or something like that, me and Tim are more than likely going to bring it up in the podcast. But I don't think that there is a ton there, but I hope that you understand where my thought process is going, and that it sparks some thoughts in your head, and that you come back and join in the conversation in the comments, or go to realaf.tv/contact and join there too. Because I'm all by myself here. I got nobody to bounce ideas off. Tim will be back in 2 weeks, though. You best believe that. He's already feeling better, but he just had to cancel last minute. It wasn't feeling like it would have been the right thing to do. So as I record this, he's probably getting his rest, and that's good. So anything else? Oh yeah, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Come on, you know how it works already. If you're listening to a podcast, you know how this works, or you have a good idea. It's those likes, those subscribes, those reviews, everything like that. They bump us up. They help get the views up, and that leads to different things in different ways. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to sign off for this episode. I'm going to leave Tim with the last word.
It's nice. It's a good titty.